welcome back to Unapologetically Black Unicorns. I've been spending the past couple of weeks with my father, and some of you have heard him on this podcast before. And today is actually Memorial Day. So my father is a veteran, and we've talked about that before, and me being an Army brat. Of course, Memorial Day is to recognize the importance of people who have served for this country and have died in that service. Now, my father didn't die in service, but, I still think about veterans and what does it mean to be a veteran? And I especially think about it now because while I was home with him, we had to figure out what benefits does he have as a veteran, health benefits in particular. And I'm telling you, the maze that we went through. And it reminded me of something I wrote back in 2015, What They Never Tell You. So it's going to be a little bit of a story time about this story that I wrote, What They Never Tell You. My father returned to the car, inserted the key into the ignition, and turned the key. The car started, and with 4 words, my childhood ended. He turned around, looked at my brother, and then me in the back seat, and he said, with utter simplicity, I'm going to Vietnam. Period. Full stop. It was a little after 5 p.m., 1969, and I was 8 years old, looking out of the car window, desperately trying to turn back time. 5 minutes earlier, Dad was in his crisp military uniform, stood at attention, saluting as evening taps blared across the Army base. 5 minutes earlier, I was a child. 5 minutes and 4 words later, that child disappeared, looking out of the window at the flatness of the Kansas landscape. I'm going to Vietnam. It was as if my dad had already gone to that place I had seen on TV. He was going to war. Dad slipped the car into gear, pressed the accelerator, and the car continued down the road. No one said a word. I was afraid to look at my older brother, and my mother stared out of the front window. It was as if the last 5 minutes were in slow motion, yet the car pulled off, we were accelerating forward, as if nothing happened. Was that the intent? To deliver a message of deployment to Vietnam as if it were a trip to the grocery store? Was this how Mom and Dad planned to protect us, their little children? And that's when I lost my childhood. If my parents were protecting me, my 8-year-old self had to grow up and fast in order to protect them. I continued to stare out of the passenger side window and would not, cry. Inside of my little body were tears and screams that I spread silently across the Kansas landscape as we made our way home. We arrived at home that evening in 1969, and we were the all-American Black military family. A house, a yard, a dog, 2 kids, with a dad headed off to Vietnam. My father, my dad, my daddy, was going to leave us, and we came home to play with the dog. My mom, who swore she never did this, but you know what she did? She gathered empty jelly jars and caught the small frogs that stuck to our glass patio doors like little green voyeurs and produced the jars of frogs to me and my brother. And we would play with them before letting them free. My older brother, as he had done practically every day since we moved to Fort Leavenworth, aligned the kitchen table and chair legs in the crosshairs of the square linoleum floor tiles. And then he showed me how neatly they were placed. All of this so he could later move everything around and trick me into believing a tornado had ripped through our kitchen. He was my big brother after all, and that's how they show love to a younger sister. I guess they play pranks and trick them. And I loved him back so much that I pretended to believe him. Everything was the same, yet I knew that soon everything would be very, very different. In 1969, no one prepared a child, even an Army brat of a child, about what to do or how to feel when their dad is going off to war. We moved to El Paso, Texas, soon after my dad's announcement so he could attend a special military language school. That summer, we lived in an apartment building, and my brother and I made fast friends with many of the neighborhood kids. I spent my time with a little German girl who lived upstairs, and we mainly played with dolls, It was comforting to be in a house where German was spoken because I was born in Bremerhaven, Germany, and I loved speaking German with my new friend. My brother was off with the boys building forts, collecting the crispy outer shed locust bodies left behind on the trees and scaring us girls away. July 16th, 1969, we celebrated my brother's birthday, and like millions of Americans, gathered around the television to watch Apollo 11 blast off, sending men to the moon.
Apollo 11, this is the launch operations manager. The launch team wishes you good luck and Godspeed.
We repeated our vigil around the TV several nights later to watch the first man, Neil Armstrong, walk on the moon, slowly hop by hop. One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. And as Armstrong pushed the pole of the American flag into the moon's dusty surface, the war was pushed far out of my mind. It was pushed so far out of my mind that I don't even remember my father leaving for Vietnam. He was gone, and we were in Englewood, New Jersey, living with my grandparents, auntie, and uncle, my mother, brother, and me. I don't remember my father leaving. Did we have a party? Did we go to the airport? Did we cry while hugging and kissing him before he boarded the plane? Did I kiss my father goodbye and tell him, "I love you, Daddy"? Did I? I don't remember. I do not remember. I'm so angry that I cannot remember my father, my dad, going off to Vietnam, going off to war. My dad was gone. Pictures of the war were no longer images of a faraway place with green jungles, smoke billowing from burning villages, or helicopters rescuing injured soldiers. In every picture and in every image was my dad. Yet every day I went to school and I was mercilessly bullied. I came home and I was mercifully loved. My cousin would come home from college to take me to father-daughter dances. My uncle would take my brother and me into New York City to see the Thanksgiving Day parade and eat roasted chestnuts. And my grandma would shower us every moment with sugar. I can hear her now. Come on and give your grandma some brown sugar. I love those kisses that greeted me at the door after school and comforted me throughout the day. I especially love those kisses and hugs when we received a letter, a postcard, or an audio tape from Dad. Then we got the picture postcard at Christmas that would change my relationship with my dad well into my adult life. A simple picture of a Santa Claus with the little Vietnamese children. A simple picture that was not simple at all. I would stare and stare at that picture, focusing first on the little Vietnamese children and then the really pitiful Santa Claus. That white beard wasn't full, it wasn't fluffy, it wasn't a fluffy white mask, but it was skimpy and flat and matted. It was dirty white fabric. And the Santa wasn't even fat. But for those children, he was magical. That's the word that stuck with me, magical. Yes, I could understand that for children orphaned by war, children who may not celebrate or know about Christmas, let alone Santa Claus, that for them, this rather inferior Santa might, by my standards, be magical. But the picture postcard from my dad said, quote unquote, he's magical. I looked closer past the suit, past the skimpy off-white beard, and suddenly I saw something I hadn't noticed before. The magic lay in the color of Santa himself. He was black. That was indeed a magical Santa. I had never seen a black Santa before. But wait, hold on. Could it be? Yes, that was my father's face. My dad was the magical black Santa. I couldn't believe it. I stared again and again and again. I was so hurt. How could he? How could he leave me here and be Santa for other children? I would take the picture out every night, hoping that the face would change, but it didn't. I looked at the picture until I couldn't look at his face for another moment. I took a number 2 pencil eraser and erased a huge X over my father's face. I erased my father. My mother begged me to tell her why, but I couldn't. I was only 8, and war destroyed my relationship with my dad. As grown up as I tried to be, I couldn't be anything but a little girl when I thought I lost my daddy. How do you explain that to anyone? Life went on after the picture incident. Christmas and New Year's came and went. The Vietnam War was present in our household through newspapers, radio, television, but most evident through the absence of my dad. One night, I woke up to hear sobbing coming out of my mother's room from behind the closed door. I could see the illuminated light from the TV seeping through the space between the door and the carpeted floor. I stopped in my tracks and just focused on the light, dancing on the carpet, somehow hoping the light would reveal to me what my mom saw on TV. What did she see? Was there some news story that made her cry? Was she lonely without my dad? Is that what made her cry? Or worse yet, did something happen to my dad? I never heard my mom cry before, and it scared me. I sulked away from her bedroom door, scampered down the hall, and climbed back into bed, this time tucking myself way, way, way down under the covers. In the morning, I decided I needed to mother my mom. So I copied the morning ritual of my grandmother, her mother, and I did it to a T. I selected an olive drab ceramic mug from the cupboard, poured steaming black coffee from the percolator into my mug, caressed the mug with both hands, and just as Grandma did, inhaled deeply while saying, I looked deeply into the cup, blowing to cool down the hot coffee, just as she did. Grandma looked like taking that first sip was like being in heaven. I too was expecting that first sip I was about to take, that I would be taken to the best place ever, and I would be tasting the best thing ever. I closed my eyes and sipped just like Grandma. Unlike Grandma, I cringed as I spat out the most horrid tasting drink I had ever had back into that olive mug. Well, so much for being like Grandma. When my mom came down for her breakfast, she got what I could give her. That was just like Grandma. I gave her some brown sugar. I never let on that I heard her crying. I never told her how much it scared me. I just did what I could do to love on her, because that's what I thought she needed, and that's what my grandma, grandpa, auntie, uncle, cousins, and brother did when we were scared by the war, missing my daddy, and wanted him home. I don't know how it happened, and I don't know when it happened, but Dad was home. Did we have a party? Did we meet him at the airport and shower him with hugs and kisses? Did I hug my dad and tell him, Daddy, I love you? Did I? I don't remember. I seriously do not remember. I erased my father from a picture postcard. I was angry, hurt, and scared. Now I was 9 and Dad was back home, and I didn't know how to tell anyone that I had lost my daddy before, and I don't want to lose him again. Back then, no one prepared a child, even an army brat of a child, what to do or how to feel when their dad is going off to war, or what to do or how to feel or what to say when he returns. They didn't tell me then, and they still haven't told me. I would sit quietly in the passenger seat as my father drove me to college every day, responding to his open-ended questions with monosyllabic responses. Yes, yeah, no, uh-huh, okay, that's 2 syllables, but you get what I'm saying. Or on a bad day, I would just make these guttural noises. Humph. This happened in the car, this happened in our home, this happened basically whenever my father and I would have a conversation. Until the morning of our drive when he told me there is no way that he was going to tolerate these one-way conversations, and that I was to speak to him with real words and with respect. Something in my 20-something body rose up and my mind was reeling. That man that I erased from the picture postcard couldn't be erased from my vision, my mind, or my life. The man is my father, will always be my father, who loved me so much that he thought to send me a picture postcard of a magical Black Santa in a war-torn Vietnam, knowing that I had never seen a Black Santa before in my life. I sat up straight, I looked at my dad, and I started to speak in whole sentences. Something that I had not really done for such a long time. Back then, they didn't tell me, and they didn't tell him, how war would change our relationship. I think a lot of relationships were changed, and we all lost something that day in 1969 when he turned around in the car and announced with 4 simple words, "I'm going to Vietnam." But as an adult, I have discovered what we also gained. Through it all, my father, my daddy, protected me, he protected his family, and as a member of the armed forces, he protected this country. I gained a strong and loving relationship with my dad and this country. I gained a hero. So I really wanted to share this story with you because, sometimes times are tough. Sometimes we don't get to tell our loved ones how we feel during Memorial Day. Many people have lost loved ones in battle, and it's just so, so hard. And our veterans deserve every piece of respect we can possibly give them. Yeah, and I think I'll just end it here. This is very, very emotional for me to share this story, but I've shared it publicly with my father, by the way, who, when I shared it with him, I sent it to him. He didn't respond to me for like 3 days, and I thought, oh my gosh, I've hurt my father. I've hurt his feelings. I did something I wasn't supposed to do. So I called him and I said, well, Dad, are you okay? I didn't mean to upset you with the story. I hope I didn't make you mad. And he said, no. He said, no, I didn't realize all of these things that were going on. And I was so moved by this story, I didn't know how to call you. So my dad and I are super duper close. And I'm so glad that, my dad thought to send me the magical Black Santa picture. And that will always be the only Santa and the only father that I ever know. All right, folks, thanks for joining me on Unapologetically Black Unicorns. As Garrett likes to share, Garrett, our producer, like, comment, subscribe, but most importantly, please do share the podcast or this episode with folks who may need to hear it. We never know kind of what messages people need to hear. And with that, I look forward to joining you next time on Unapologetically Black Unicorns.